Hello and welcome to Full Throttle on Unprecedented TV from the Alliance of British Drivers. I'm Brian Gregory, Policy Director of the ABD, and today we're covering a lot of ground because frankly there's no shortage of battles being fought against the British motorists right now. Potholes, punishing fuel taxes, blanket 20-mile-an-hour limits, ULEZ expansion and the push towards electric vehicles whether you want one or not. And behind all of that, a broader global agenda that is quietly reshaping how we live, travel and make choices about our own lives.
And I'm Paul Naylor, Communications Director for the ABD. And joining us today is Sandi Adams, independent researcher and campaigner, and someone who has dedicated years to understanding and exposing the wider agenda driving so many of these policies. Agenda 2030. We'll be getting into the detail on what that means for drivers, for local communities, and for personal freedom in this country. It's an eye-opening conversation, so buckle up. This is Full Throttle. Hello, Sandi.
Hello, Paul and Brian. It's really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi.
So, tell us a bit about yourself, Sandi.
Well, I've kind of been on this for quite a while, and it is really strange how you find yourself in a position of really suddenly thinking, hang on, there's something wrong here. I'm going to actually spend a lot of time looking into this. And I was working in the live events industry years ago, and I happened to work on a Microsoft project, and I met Bill Gates. And right. I had to literally create. I was a designer. I had to create an installation for him, and it was a mini smart city. There's no other way of describing it. In England, I was working for an English production company, and the Microsoft, account was there, and he wanted this interconnected little city in the early 2000s, and I began to question it then, and then various things happened. I was working for Google with Eric Schmidt and Gerard Cohen, and all of this jigsaw puzzle fitted into my head, and I thought there's something wrong here, and I gave up the corporate world. I couldn't bear it anymore. I was working in for GlaxoSmithKline, all these awful people, and I just decided to change my life, and came down to the West Country with my children, and I became a researcher. I just literally, I bought a pub, I ran a music venue, and I did my own talks in it, and I just literally went deep diving into what was then Agenda 21. And my biggest teacher was Rosa Corey, who sadly is no longer with us, as a lot of people who spoke out aren't. And bless her, she was the lady who really blew the whistle on Agenda 21 in the United States, because they were further down the line than we were. So I just did a deep dive, and that's it. That's it.
That's amazing.
So, Sandi, for anyone who hasn't come across Agenda 21, now Agenda 2030, can you give us just sort of plain English summary of what it's all about?
Yeah, well, It started with the technocracy movement in the 1930s. It goes back that far, and it was a movement to bring in a technocracy-based world, and they wanted to create a carbon economy in the 1930s. Believe it or not. Now, Elon Musk's great grandfather was involved in this. Joshua Haldeman. It's a long story, but I won't go into that. That's probably for another day. But basically, they had to give up that fight for a carbon-based economy in about 1947, because the war was over, and people weren't ready to embrace communism, global communism. They wanted capitalism still, and that's what it was all about. So they basically, the United Nations, obviously a lot happened around 1947, 1948. The United Nations set up.
Sorry.
That's okay.
That was to remind me that we're having this Zoom con.
and your time's up. It's been lovely seeing you.
Oh, this is lovely.
Yeah.
So basically the United Nations, there was the League of Nations before that. That was dismantled. The United Nations took up the whole baton for this whole agenda. And yet they were set up to create peace. But
one of the chief architects being Maurice Strong.
Maurice Strong. Now I'll tell you about Maurice Strong.
Yeah.
Now he was the architect of Agenda 21. He was the Secretary General of the United Nations in 1992. And he decided he was the most extraordinary man. He was he worked for the Rockefellers for 17 years. Yeah. He was a communist by ideology and a capitalist by methodology. So he was a perfect communitarian. He was the one that wanted to use both strategies. And really it's the same as what we've got now, which is, stakeholder capitalism. That is the basis of stakeholder capitalism. Yeah. So he decided, along with a whole load of other globalists, to create the Earth. Well, they created the Club of Rome first in 1968, and the Club of Rome came out with a load of sort of they were Club of Rome reports, really, and there was the three major ones that made the bones of Agenda 21. There was one in 1972, which was Limits to Growth, which was all about depopulation, and there were too many people on the planet. You had to get rid of them, blah blah blah. And then in 1987, there was Our Common Future, which was a Club of Rome report that was really about shifting the power base of the economy of the world from the West to the East, to India and China. And it was a very it was literally shifting all that power, which is what happened. All our industry went somewhere else. We manufacture nothing. Planned decline of the West. And then the third one, which happened in 1991, just before the Earth Summit, was it was called the First Global Revolution, and that is where in there they invented climate change. They literally invented climate change. And they said, that the enemy of humanity is man, and they threw around all sorts of ideas. Oh, climate change would fit the bill because we need a common threat to unite humanity, and that's what they used. And that's and so they got the Earth Summit going, where they got 178 countries or leaders of countries to sign up to global governance. They thought they were saving the planet. No, it was global governance. So that was Agenda 21. And so that they made at the Earth Summit, they made a pledge. They made 8 goals. We've got 17 now, but they made 8 goals to be executed by the year 2000. They called them the 8 Millennium Goals. Now, as usual, straight after the Earth Summit, nothing much happened. People weren't really engaging with it. It was all signed up. It was in a treaty, in a soft law, whatever you want to call it. But nothing much happened. So they decided to accelerate it. And so in 2015, they had this big launch of the in 2015 at the Vatican in Rome. They launched the 17 goals of Agenda 2030, which were much more about the technocracy. It was all about the technology that's coming in, and to get those goals finished by 2030. Well, yet again, nothing much happened. And so the way they accelerated it in 2019 is that they formed a meeting in the United Nations with Antonio Guterres and the Klaus Schwab from WEF, and they created what's known as the Strategic Framework Partnership Document, which was to accelerate the 17 goals. Now, there were several. I can't remember. There were 6 things that would accelerate it. And one of them was called digital cooperation. That's the one I remember best, because what happened after that, that was in June 2019. In November 2019, they held Event 201 in New York with at the Johns Hopkins Institute, and they had all the people that were in Geneva, WEF, but they'd added Bill and Melinda Gates, who, and it was a tabletop exercise to say, what if a novel coronavirus escaped from a wet market in Brazil? What would we do? What would we do? It was a 3-day. It's still up. You can still find
That's never going to happen, Sandy. What?
Yeah, and it was brilliant because it accelerated. While we were sleeping, all the infrastructure went in to actually create this technocratic nightmare that we're living in right now. And so everything went in really for the whole digital ID. You suddenly all the infrastructure, the biometrics went into supermarkets, facial recognition, cashless society, everything went cashless during COVID, didn't it? They tried so hard to get rid of money, and so everything went wonky really after that, and it's getting worse and worse because they're trying even more to accelerate. And of course now we have this war with an energy crisis which will accelerate it even more, because what do you do when there's no petrol, when there's no, you don't fly, and that all ties up with the absolute zero document that we're going to be talking about. Everything is a big plan, I'm afraid.
The thing about big plans is that like the same war, the plan only works as long as you're not exposed to the enemy, so to speak.
Exactly.
Well, the enemy is now organizing, and that's us. And we are going for these people. We're going to out them. We're going to show that they're actually criminals, they're evil, and that we should actually be sanctioning them in the most intense ways possible through legal processes or whatever means it takes, because they are out to destroy Western civilization. So basically, whichever country they come from, they need to be tried for treason in that country until we've got all of them behind bars or better, not in existence anymore. And then we can get back to living nice, normal, liberal, friendly, happy lives.
I couldn't agree more, and that's music to my ears. To see these people actually brought to justice would be the best thing. And so far, everything that they've done has been able to be achieved because people have complied. It's total compliance through, global compliance, because they thought these people were on the good side. They're not. They are evil.
No. Well, see, a long time ago, or quite a while ago, I started to realize that all this stuff about left and right doesn't actually mean anything, because if you were under Stalin or you're under Hitler, it was basically identical. So there's no difference between Nazis, fascists, and Marxists. So Marxo-fascist is the bucket, and that's what Stalin, Hitler, Pol Pot, all these other nut job sort of totalitarians are in. And the rest of us, we're in the libertarian. So the Overton window now is not left-right. It's totalitarian, libertarian. Libertarians here and totalitarians somewhere over there. And that's, of course, why they always throw out this far-right thing. Because if you actually got liberal principles, as far as they're concerned, you are far-right. Because you believe in liberty and freedom and honesty and integrity, all the things that they believe are defunct.
It's the easiest thing to be thrown at people, isn't it? It just stops the narrative straight away. You're far right. Okay.
Well, no, I'm right so far.
I'm right. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, it's not left and right. It's right or wrong. I mean, either it's
correct.
right or it's wrong.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So we've talked about who's actually behind 2030. How is it that it's being enacted by politicians across so many countries?
Do you know, this is interesting. Either they're completely captured. I think it must be money. I mean, I cannot understand how whole countries could have. I mean, our politicians could have gone along with the whole net zero thing. I mean, they sold it as saving the planet, but it's really interesting. It was never about environmentalism. It's always been about money and control. And you know, you can almost see it. The last COP conference, which was held in Belém in the Amazon in Brazil,
they destroyed huge stretches of the Amazon forest to build a road.
Exactly. They really are showing themselves to be the most unenvironmentally friendly organization in the world, and how one can really take them seriously. And what I found interesting is Ed Miliband got very frustrated at that conference. He was almost tearing his hair out because net zero isn't working, and they agreed that net zero isn't working, that actually the EV batteries, the whole car, electric cars have been a bit of a mess. They were sort of discussing everything, and Tony Blair apparently quite happily said, well, it doesn't matter if net zero isn't working because we've now got AI. And the whole thing was never about, they've got the infrastructure in to create their global governance, which was always what they wanted. They've got all the technology in place, so they don't need us to believe that we're saving the planet anymore. They don't give a damn.
No.
They will give a damn when they're dragged out, frog marched out by the police and slung in jail.
Well, that would be nice. Could we do it? Will that happen? I hope so. Yeah.
So do I.
Yeah.
So the phrase social engineering, how do you think that's been applied over the decades?
I think the Fabian Society have done a very good job at that. Gradualism, by introducing very, very, shall I say, cultural Marxism into every infrastructure in our country and globally. But I'm going to focus on the UK because the UK are being targeted so much just now. If they can actually get the UK to fall, they will be able to capture the world. And that's why it's so important in this country. We have to fight for our lives, literally. And if we can, I hate to say it, but when I say I hate to say it, I don't really. I mean, what I believe is that this country is so, there is something very special about this country, and the very fact that it's a tiny country that did have influence. And I'm not bigging up the empire by any means, but certainly in the Second World War, nobody could penetrate this country. And I think there's something really important about the British. We're the most patient, the most, we are a lovely bunch of people, and we do have ethics and morals. Our governments don't, but we do.
No.
Yeah. And I think we need to really focus on saving our own country, because I think everything else will fall into place once this place is saved.
Yeah. Once you sort of crack the mold that they're trying to put around us here, then the whole thing starts to fall apart very quickly. The arguments that they propound for everything they're proposing don't stack up, and it's only because the mainstream media are pushing all this tripe that people swallow it. If we can drive a wedge or basically discredit the mainstream media, they help us a lot, because a lot of what they say is totally discredited. Then we start to push them back.
Yeah, indeed. And I think really it takes. I don't know. You see, everybody's lost faith in politics. What we do need is some kind of bringing back of maybe the spiritual and the moral element of into politics. So that the judgments are made for the greater good, and not over money, not greed and stupidity, which is what we want at the moment.
And control. Because since the Blair introduced this Supreme Court, the judgments of the Supreme Court are extremely political, and they are all aimed at actually reducing the status or destroying the status of the individual, and increasing the importance of the state. And of course, the state is heading to be the biggest employer in the country, one of the biggest consumers of resources and allocation resources. And that we need to rein that back a long way. There's got to be a massive call.
Getting rid of jury, trial by jury is massive. We cannot, you know, get rid of trial by. It has to be fought for, because you know, I have to say it. You know, it gets biblical in that sense. You know, it's God's law, and it's common God's law. We have to bring God back into it, because let's face it, we're in a constitutional. We have a constitution, but nobody's taking any notice of it anymore. And you know, we have a constitutional monarchy, although you wouldn't know it because Prince Charles doesn't give a damn.
Charles is actually in with WEF and
yes,
World
of
Bank
course.
and all these guys. He's an acolyte of these sort of principles. So we shouldn't expect any help from our monarch.
Well, he was at the Earth Summit. Funny enough, he went to Rio de Janeiro the year before the Earth Summit in 1991. He parked, you know, his Royal Yacht Britannia in Rio de Janeiro harbour, and he invited all these globalists and businessmen to form what was then the public-private partnerships. That was in 1991, and he used his Prince of Wales. It was the Prince of Wales business. He's still got the Prince of Wales Business Forum, and he used that as a model to create the public-private partnerships, which were all behind the Earth Summit. And it was all about money. It was all about creating this new carbon economy, which he has benefited from so much. And he was at the Earth Summit shaking hands with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. He was in there. He was
all the main actors involved in this. The problem is that public-private partnerships doesn't actually have any place for something called the electorate.
Exactly. It's a corporatocracy, and you forget democracy. The big corporations, and it's a form of fascism. Well,
Marxo-fascism, really, because it's the same thing. Two different receptacles with the same political excrement in them, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So a lot of our viewers that are very passionate about motoring and about driving and about getting from A to B.
Quite right.
What? How do you feel this all fits in with motoring? Can you join the dots between your thought processes and motorists?
You know, you look at all the green. You know, it's funny how the Green Party changed. The Ecology Party, which was all about environmentalism. I was a member of the Ecology Party years and years ago, in the late 80s, early 90s, and it changed overnight. Do you remember when they got rid of Bellamy and replaced him with Attenborough?
Yes.
Well, that was about the time. It was the early 90s where suddenly the Green Party was all about getting rid of cars, getting rid of planes. You've got to. It was really about Just Stop Oil. All of that came about. Extinction Rebellion. All that a little bit later, obviously. And they got this absolute passion. You've got to cycle everywhere. You can't drive a car because it's not saving the planet. You can't fly a plane or go on holiday.
I beg to differ. When you're driving your car, you are emitting carbon dioxide, which is saving the planet.
Well, of course, but that's theirs. I mean, I was being funny. That's the way they interpreted it. And you see, it takes away the individual as well. When you're in your car, you're autonomous. You can go anywhere you like. And it's a sense of freedom, isn't it? We love, I love driving. When I passed my driving test, when I was, can't remember how old I was, 18 or 19, I felt like freedom like I'd never had before. It was so wonderful.
Exactly.
And and
but they don't want us to have freedom.
No.
They want total control. It's a command and control philosophy where the state decides and you comply. Whereas actually what we want is a situation where we decide and the state accepts and complies, because they are our servants, not the other way around.
Exactly. And to be honest, I don't know if you've been in London recently, but the policies that they've implemented there, where they've made many cycle lanes, which really are underused, and then there's all the cars are squished, and they've got bus lanes, a bus and taxi lane, and all the cars are squished into this tiny lane, and it causes congestion. That isn't good, because it causes pollution.
Well, that was the deliberate policy. The aim was to subtract road space and make use of private vehicles more and more difficult and more inconvenient. And then, of course, you've got all these bus lane cameras and yellow box junction cameras,
bus gates.
It's a revenue.
It's about two things. It's about the net zero absolute fires. It is absolute zero, the document, isn't it?
The document,
about actually getting people off the road,
Off
onto
the
public
road.
transport, onto bicycles, and onto their feet.
Good, you've got it there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we've got it. We know all about it.
Yeah, it's funny.
People need to see this, because if you like most ordinary working people, look forward to your 2 or however many weeks it is away in the summer, flying to somewhere warm and sunny. Well, you can forget that, because there won't be any airports to fly from.
Yeah.
You won't be able to get any products, because there'll be no commercial shipping in or out of the country. And as a result, you'll be expected to eat, I don't know, cockroach soup, or
jellyfish soup, or whatever,
or some synthetic horrible food substitute. And of course, you will be less healthy as a result.
Yeah.
And everything is about control, giving people less freedom. And then of course there's a nirvana in the future where we're going to be able to do everything with renewable materials, renewable energy. We've already seen what happened in Spain when renewable energy totally dominates, and then the weather changes, and then suddenly the unreliability of renewables caused the whole grid to crash, and 11 people died because there was no power, and they required medical equipment to keep them alive. So that's the future we're looking at if these complete cretins get into control.
Yes,
I think, Brian,
right. Yeah.
I think, Brian, what we need to do is we're going to put this in the next issue of Driving Sense, which is our membership magazine, we will tie it in with an article about yourself, Sandy.
Lovely. That's great. That would be great. And I tell you what, I discovered this Absolute Zeros document years ago, and at the time I was doing a tour of England. This is way before COVID. I think it was around 2016, 2017. I did a tour with Piers Corbyn, Mark Windows, and myself, and we went all over England at weekends, and I used to flag this up in my PowerPoint, and honestly, people were saying they're going to get rid of burning stoves. We live on a boat on the river. How are we going to be? And they didn't quite believe it until COVID happened, and then this document started filtering out, because people realised, and I was really pushing it. But the thing that really got me, and so many friends of mine said, well, it says there that between 2030 and 2049 they're going to close all the airports, and there's no planes in or out of the UK, and there's no shipping in or out of the UK. That's ridiculous. How would they achieve that? Well, look what's happening now. That is how they're achieving it.
Yes.
The trial run.
Exactly. I
mean, it is a frightening prospect, isn't it? Everything that's on this chart here. I think a few years back when you saw this, you'd look at it and think, well, that's never going to happen.
That's what people have said. People used to have a go at me and say, you're just fear-mongering. No, this went through the House of Lords, and I think it was Lord, I can't remember his name now. Anyway, that they pushed it for... it went through
Debon.
The House of Lords.
Was it Lord Debon, John Gummer?
No, it wasn't. No, that Gummer was the digital ID. This one was Lord somebody of, I can't remember. I want to say Brownston, but anyway, it was something like that. And he said that this should be implemented at the earliest possible time, because we needed, and it was just before COVID that they actually passed this through the House of Lords. Well, they didn't. It wasn't put into policy, and it didn't go to royal assent. But it was almost like a tacit agreement that this would be happening. And I'm absolutely sure that this is a playbook. It's literally it's a roadmap to 2030. Without a doubt.
It is. Absolutely. But none of this has any sound basis in science. I mean, my background is that I read chemistry at Oxford, and the simple fact is that humans only produce about 3% of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The rest is natural. So even if we produce no carbon dioxide at all, it will have negligible effect on the climate. So they're just kidding us. It's not about climate. It's about something more sinister, as you say.
It is. It's about total global control and literally locking us down. It's prison island, and that's what we will be. And what's worse is that in this is you, I don't know whether you can see, but by between 2030 and 2049, phasing out all meat and dairy, and also, you know, we've seen the destruction of our farming in the last the last 5 years. It's got worse and worse and worse.
And it's quite a deliberate policy to stop us being self-sufficient in food, just as the policies aimed at making us totally dependent on external sources of energy instead of exploiting our own.
To me, it's very similar to the Bolshevik Revolution, where the whole of Europe was starved, you know, and this could so easily happen if we don't do something. If we're literally at that final bit, we're at 0 hour, you know, we need to get something done.
Well, I think there's certainly got people like Orban, is it, in Hungary, who understand what's going on. And if he can get re-elected, he's going to be a big thorn in the side of the EU. And of course the EU is doing its best to discredit AfD in Germany and Le Pen in France, because they don't want populists getting in who actually vote for the policies that we believe in: freedom and liberty and freedom of expression, freedom of movement. So there's a huge storm brewing that I don't think they realize just how big the backlash will be when it starts, and when it starts, it will be brutal.
I think the only way that you're going to sort of combat the sort of politics that we've got going on at the moment, whereby you've got a government that got in on a mandate that is nothing like what they're actually doing now, is that you make them responsible for the mandate that they present to the public. So if they say they're going to do a certain thing, they've got to do it. And certainly they don't do things that they haven't put out there to the people who voted for them. You know, I can't think of a single thing in the you know, on the run up to the general election that mentioned anything about the Chagos Islands. I don't think that was in there.
That's the biggest scam ever,
isn't it?
I can't believe that's happened.
And we're giving away billions of money at a time where we're struggling as a country.
Well, that is because it's
crazy.
a planned destruction of the UK.
It is.
Absolutely planned.
Yes, Catherine McBride has just produced a document basically saying that it's planned industrial sabotage. Really,
it is. Yeah. We can see it. Plain as day.
So we've covered UK fires, and obviously the 15-minute cities, the LTNs, all the ULEZs and things like that that are spontaneously springing up are all part of this global plan to as you say, progressively lock people down.
It is. I mean, what happened in Canterbury and Oxford and Cambridge. I mean, I believe Oxford is now a fully functioning 15-minute city now, isn't it? They've managed to carve it up into zones, and there was opposition there, but there was an awful lot of controlled opposition came in to break up, you know, the protests and everything. But there's, you know, there's certain things you can do. Now, what happened I think it was at the end of last year, there was an LTN put in place in one of the boroughs in London, in Lambeth, and it was in West Dulwich. They were all the infrastructure went in for the LTNs, and they were put, and it didn't go through due process through the council, and the residents got together and they challenged it. They didn't even need to go to judicial review. Now, this is a little lesson for any lawyers who are listening, please. Because they challenged it under something called the gunning principles, and there's 4 of them. And do make note of this, anybody that's listening, the 4 gunning principles. And it is about failure of due process, failure of consultation. And they won the case in the High Courts of Justice, the residents of West Dulwich, and they managed to overturn the LTNs. Lambeth had to take all the infrastructure out. They also had to pay the court costs, and they had to reimburse any fines that had been given under those LTNs.
And was there much made of this in the media, in the news?
Not a lot. Not a lot. But I that time I was working for UK Column, and I really pushed it out, and I told loads of people, and so far I thought, well, why didn't they do that? Well, they could do this retrospectively with Canterbury, with Cambridge, with Oxford. So you know, if I'm too busy, but I just put the word out and say you're doing this. But I just would love that those to be challenged under the Gunnings, because the gunning principles were there to stop. To really have due democratic process, and if it's not being done properly, it can be challenged. But it did cost the residents £50,000. They managed to raise it between them, and if you think about it, in a whole community, £50,000 isn't a great deal. No. You can actually get that together and go straight. You don't even need judicial review. Go straight to the High Courts and say this has not been done with a due process.
Yeah. I would say that was £50,000 well spent.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. 100%.
There's another guy did a challenge that's under, I can't remember the full, but under Rule 58 as well, which was related. Yes, it was separate, but he won. They had to pull out another LTN recently. I can't remember which part of London it was, but he challenged them legally. And again, it was about due process and about consultation and stuff like that. But he used a road traffic regulation, and he succeeded as well.
Fantastic. So but people think, I mean, I remember, because they talk about low traffic neighborhoods, they talk about neighborhood plans and all this kind of stuff, and the councils try and sell it as a grassroots initiative. It is not. This is a global initiative. It all came out of the C40 cities, and you probably know about the C40 cities. And that's where the whole 15-minute city ideology came from. And it's a global initiative.
Yeah, and in the UK, there's now UK 100 cities, and these are councils that have unilaterally decided to enact the principles of Agenda 2030 without consulting the electorate and without even mentioning in a manifesto or anything.
Exactly.
So this comes back to what Paul was talking about. If it's not in your manifesto, you can't do it, and if it is in your manifesto and you don't do it, then the sanction to me should be election straight away.
Absolutely, it should trigger a general election.
And I don't know, I can't remember how much time we've got, but there is a bit of an issue with devolution as well, because devolution is really that's coming from the C40s. That's coming from the global covenant of what I call smart city mayors. There actually is called the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. And what they're trying to do, we originally in the UK, we had around 365 or 66 local governments and or authorities. But what they're doing now is they're amalgamating them, as you know. And some of the elections aren't happening because, they're saying, we're waiting till we go combined. So they get a few and they combine them. And certainly in my area, they first of all combined us. We were several different councils, and they combined a few of them together. And they've called it the Combined Authority, and they've called it Somerset Council. Whereas before it was other ones like Sedgemoor and Mendip and all that stuff. Anyway, when you look at what they're doing, they're boiling it down to they're going to try and boil it down to the regions, 7 regions. So all those councils boiled down to 7 regions. Now, if you look at Tony Blair's federal England map, it's exactly the same. There's no difference. But what they'll do is in each region, and what they're going to do, if you read the devolution white paper and I think it's called the Cities and Communities Act of 2016, you'll find that they are trying to dissolve Parliament and put these mayors, these mayors for climate and energy, who will have jurisdiction over everything that Parliament does. They will have jurisdiction over their region. So you've got a mini Sadiq Khan in every region who has ultimate
Perish
power.
the thought.
Horrible thought.
But this is happening, and I think if people knew how democracy is being destroyed by this system, they wouldn't agree to it. But it's just going through. And what they do is they even have jurisdiction over police and crime commissioning, which is really scary. So
Yeah,
you've got somebody in there who is a mayor of climate and energy in charge of police and crime commissioning, of health and social care, housing, planning, you name it. What will they be doing? Will they be, and they're selling it to you as, oh, these mayors will be far better because they'll be dealing with your locality. No, they will be dealing with the global agenda, and you will come last on the list.
Yeah. I mean, I first started to get really concerned about this years and years ago, and because I realized that the road safety agenda had actually been subverted. Because in the earliest discussions I had with people from the Department for Transport, I took the accident causation statistics in and said, look, the top causes are did not look but did not see, or failed to judge the path or speed of converging vehicles. So they're all observation hazard perception issues, and illegal speed comes at the bottom. Why are you concentrating on illegal speed? Well, of all the factors that are involved in accidents, one that's the most amenable to treatment is speed. So in other words, we won't concentrate on the issues that are important, they'll concentrate on the ones we can make important and monetize. And that, I realize, well, if it's starting here, then there's other stuff going on here that's probably along the same line, and it won't be good for any of us.
It's all about money and power and control. Yeah.
Well, there's two questions here, which I'm going to roll into one because they kind of touch on each other. So there are billions of people affected by the agenda. So why aren't we hearing about it on the BBC or mainstream television news? And is there a reason the mainstream media seems reluctant to cover this? Is it ignorance, or is it something more deliberate?
It's very much a deliberate. It's a deliberate thing. I mean, the people that control the media control the agenda. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
There was a rally that took place in London. It's probably about 3 years ago now. It wasn't long after we came out of lockdown, and there was nothing about it on the mainstream media. There was nothing on BBC News. There was nothing on Sky, and it was a rally that had got thousands and thousands of people around Nelson's column. There was reporters on there doing live feed on Facebook, and I'm thinking, well, this is huge. Why are we not hearing about it? And it was almost a light bulb moment for me, because I thought, well, how much are we not being told? And it's being
how
hidden
much of
from
what we
us.
are being told is actually true.
Exactly. Well, I was doing rallies during the COVID times, freedom rallies, and there were millions of us, and it was not, it was covered very, very scantily by the BBC, and they said it's about 500 people, 500. But there were millions of us marching, and it wasn't covered. So everything is we're being censored in every way.
The news has been politicized.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, very much so.
Always.
It's frightening stuff.
It is.
So if Agenda 2030 rolls out unchallenged, what does Britain look like in 10 years for the ordinary motorist?
Well, there'll be, if they have their way, there'll be no cars. I mean, they have kept on saying that they will continue to have EVs, the electric cars. They certainly want to phase out diesel and petrol, without a doubt. And the EVs simply don't work. I mean, we know that, don't we? They are not. They're very heavy on the road. They cause massive damage to the road because they are so heavy. They are clunky. They don't go very far. But why would they want you to go very far anyway? And they also burst into flames. They don't have a good shelf life. The whole thing. And they're extremely expensive, and I don't think there's a future for electric cars.
They depreciate like a stone as well.
Yes,
petrol and diesel vehicles.
This
is the second time they've tried to foist electric vehicles on us. And the first time around it failed because the internal combustion engine was superior, and it's still the case now. And of course, the real breaking point, and they must be crossing all their fingers and toes it doesn't happen, but if one of these things goes up on a cross-channel ferry or in a tunnel or in the San Bernard Pass tunnel or something like that, then there'll be a huge number of deaths down to this thermal runaway phenomenon. And then they'll have nowhere to hide.
Mm.
Yeah, and we also, if ever there's a huge pileup on a motorway and we end up with traffic jams that go on for a number of hours, we potentially got hundreds of cars that have got to be towed off the motorway as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's going to be events like that and what you've just
Yeah.
said, Brian, that are going to highlight it, and it almost needs to happen, sadly,
unfortunately,
for anything to be done.
To wake people up. Yeah. Sadly.
Yeah.
It takes something like that to trigger people to realize what's really going on.
Yeah.
But it might not even, you see, I feel that this whole thing with the war, they call it war, you know, that this is actually a planned energy crisis that will stop us driving and flying anyway. You know, I don't know, but it seems to me that it's a very good way of fulfilling absolute zero in one fell swoop. So there you are.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm not wishing to speak out of turn, Brian. I'm sure I'm not. But at the Alliance of British Drivers, we're not totally against electric vehicles, but they should be a choice. It should be a personal choice.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what people want. But we shouldn't be heading down a cul-de-sac, should we call it, not a road. We shouldn't be heading down a cul-de-sac where we're being forced to have that as the only way of powering your vehicle. It should be a choice. And that's we were talking before about the loss of freedom. I think you could sum it all up with the word choice, because I love my car. I choose to get in it when I want to. I can choose to go where I want and pull up on the driveway or by the road where I want to be, rather than have to rely on either empty public transport, be the only person on a 52-seater bus. How economic is that? Or in a taxi that's going to cost me stupid amount of money to get from the same distance. It's just choice is a big thing.
Now, is it true that they're phasing out diesel very soon? I mean, I haven't kept.
Well, they're trying to make it.
Know. Yeah,
they're trying to make it so that you know, it's more expensive and difficult to drive a diesel vehicle. But the simple fact is, modern diesel vehicles, and I happen to drive one, have got very, very low emissions. They're a lot less heavy than alternative electric powered vehicles. And the other thing is that the BEVs, battery electric vehicles, are so heavy that the biggest problems with them arise from the emissions from the brakes and from the tires. And they actually swamp any other considerations. And of course, the carbon dioxide emissions are at a power station, usually combined cycle gas turbine, because the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining.
Of course.
So they just displace the emissions, but the tire and brake emissions are hundreds of times worse than from a conventional vehicle. So they're not an environmental benefit. And then, of course, you've got to consider all of the resources that are required to build electric cars, to build batteries, and to build the infrastructure to power them, which is usually in the Orkneys or somewhere, and is transferring power through copper wires and all the way down to London, where a lot of the demand for electricity for BEVs is.
And also the minerals that they're mining, all the cobalt and the lithium and all that. You know, children in the Congo are being exploited, and it is, the whole thing doesn't work. Nothing works, and it's, in a way, it's not meant to. I mean, they don't care.
No. It's designed to fail, but fail once everybody's bought one of these.
Exactly.
You know, one of these sort of supercharged milk floats, and we
haven't people were promised less tax and all sorts, but hey ho, we're in a situation where they're taxed the same as everybody else now. And
that was obvious at the start. It couldn't. That wasn't sustainable economically.
And I mean, I've been a journalist at a regional newspaper, and the motoring editor asked me if I wouldn't mind trying out a Nissan Leaf. It was like driving a mobile phone, because all you're conscious of is that range anxiety that you naturally get with an EV. You drive it like no other car, and because you're concentrating on that, you're not concentrating on the road.
Exactly.
You know, it not only is it impractical, but it's also, in my opinion, a dangerous choice.
Right.
That's just my experience.
That's really interesting. Wonderful.
Well, I think we've pretty much covered everything that we wanted to today, Brian.
We've certainly shone a light on the murky goings on of Agenda 2030. I think there's no question about that.
Oh, good.
And we should maybe reconvene a little bit down the line and see how things have progressed or hopefully retrogressed back towards sanity.
Exactly. I mean, I'd love to. Just lately, I've written in a magazine called Propaganda, and I've explained the 17 goals and what they really mean, because they're sugar coated. They look, they look all wonderful, and I could actually publish those in your magazine along with.
Please.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I encourage people always to go to my new podcast, which is Beyond 2030 and Beyond with Sandi Adams. 2030 and beyond.
2030 and beyond. Right. Okay. 2030 and beyond with Sandi Adams. You've got to remember your own podcast, you know.
I keep getting it wrong, and I keep getting told off. It's 2030 and beyond with Sandi Adams.
Yeah. And what I'm also going to do when we produce our next magazine, I'm going to put the link in for the video that I watched yesterday, which dates back to 2023 when you were
that one.
That is but it's
pretty scary really, when you watch it and realize that a lot of what was discussed there as
is coming
conspiracy theory is, is last week's conspiracy theory is this week's policy.
Yeah. So I think that's an important
thank you.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
So thank you, Sandi.
It's been so nice speaking to you guys. Thank you so much.
Do come back. We will invite you back.
Please
Lovely.
do. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, Sandi.
Bye.